In a world of constant consumption, it can be overwhelming to our nervous systems and our spirit. Let's navigate the world together with topics to help inspire you, help you grow, help you find the magic that is you, and help you move into an active role of your soul's experience. Taking you from passenger to the driver's seat, this is Conscious Consumption. Welcome back to Conscious Consumption, where episodes are released every third Friday. So if you're looking for new episodes, you could expect them monthly. If you are new here, welcome. I'm so happy you joined. I want to get into today's episode. However, before we do, I do want to share a little something because so much has happened since the last episode that I released. I have been having lots of little shifts energetically, things going on around me physically, moves, and it's just really interesting. Some of the stuff that's been getting rattled a little bit. And so I want to share this tidbit with you of information with some of the backstory of what happened recently. I was getting some intuitive hits on something and I kept shrugging it off. And when I say shrugging it off, I mean that I was having messages come up, but I kept finding myself in these situations where I was making excuses for them and really trying to find reasons to not believe what I was getting hits on. So fast forward to a class that I'm in after I had been getting a lot of information coming through in various ways, whether it was through card readings from somebody else that was doing a card reading for me, or whether it was me getting my intuitive hits through even dream cycles and so forth. So I'm in a class. It's like a 3.5 hour class, amazing class. And we're doing a lot of work around like the crown chakra and third chakra area. So we're doing work with our guides and really heavy meditations and so forth. Wonderful class, get to the end of it. And I felt this like, this pull in this direction to completely alter my day. I had plans set up for that particular day. I had like grocery shopping, all the home stuff. I had my kiddos with me. I had work stuff that needed to get done, things that had to get done before Monday. I was really trying to make the most of my time. And for me, like time is very valuable. So, for me to like go and alter my day to make a change, like really throws things off. But I was really being called to make a change in the scheduling and go with my husband on this little short trip to go pick up a buddy's car. And what was interesting is my husband didn't know the location of where we were going. He was waiting to hear back from his buddy, but we thought it was in this one general area. And so I started, moving all the puzzle pieces, if you will, chess pieces really is what it feels like, but, to get everything in place so that I could go with him. And it wasn't like it was because I was wanting to hang out with my husband, because I would love to hang out with my husband. But I'm telling you, it wasn't because of that. It was because I felt like I needed to go on this trip with him. I was really being called to go. So I go ahead and make all the arrangements. I go with my husband. We're driving in one particular area where we thought it was, get the text message from his buddy and get the address, and it ends up being like 2 cities over. So we start heading in that direction, pick up the car. We decide to go get a bite to eat. And I was choosing the place to eat, and I wasn't familiar with the area, or so I thought. I choose the place, and as we're driving, going to the location where we were going to go eat at, I start recognizing some of the neighborhood. And I'm like, oh, okay, I recognize this area. This is where my oldest and I used to go roller skating. There's a crystal shop over here. And then sure enough, like we drive, turn the corner, see this crystal shop. And I like look at my husband. I'm like, we need to go there afterwards. Like I had this strong calling to go to this crystal shop and go look at books there. And the crystal shop, by the way, they have a book section, but it is like the smallest book section. It's not like you're going to a small little bookstore or anything like that. Like the back of the store has this little tiny section of maybe 20 books. So for me to want to go there to go look at books was kind of like unusual because there's so many other places that you would go to look at books. but I felt like I really need to go look at them. So we go get lunch. We finish up and everything, go to the crystal store, kind of tinker around a little bit in the crystal store. I make my way to the back of the store where the books are. And I didn't even scan the entire like three sections. It's like three shelves of books, and they're all like facing out. That's how small it is, that they're all like facing you. And I didn't scan the section. I immediately went to the bottom shelf and I had this one book that was just like screaming out to me. And I pick it up, and it wasn't like when I tell you that like the cover wasn't something that I would typically like pick up to like flip through or anything like that. Like it really wasn't. And I've posted about this before because it's like, don't judge a book by a cover because it really is true. Like, don't judge a book by its cover because you have no idea, like, without really getting into it. But, anyways, I picked up this book. I opened the book, and the page that I opened to was exactly what I had been dealing with. And it confirmed and validated all these little hits that I was getting. And it was really like my guide's way of like telling me, hey, you're on the right track. Yes, this is happening, stay on course, blah, blah, blah. So it was really a great confirmation, something that I needed. But it was funny because I took the book over to my husband and I was like, look, check this out. Because I had already told him on the drive up, what was going on. And he could see the obvious signs of it too, like when I was showing him the book. But the reason I want to share this story is really because it is so important for us to follow those hits and follow our gut instinct on things and really like listen in, tune in to those times where maybe we're getting that little nudge to take a change in the day and like change plans, or maybe a change in course, like if we're being called to turn right when we would typically be going straight and then turning left up at the top. You know what I mean? Like there's reasons why we're getting pulled in a direction. And sometimes that leads, not sometimes, I'd say most of the time, it leads to something that gets us out of trouble. It's like, or puts us in a course of where we're supposed to be heading. Do you know what I mean? So just a little quick share there because it has been like a whirlwind. And yeah, I'll just leave it at that. But part of what it was about was around protection and protecting one's energy. And I'm not going to go deep into it. But I will say that, yeah, it was the validation that I needed for what I had been feeling and what had been coming through. And like I said, all the signs that I was getting there. So listen to your hits. We do have, speaking of protection, this episode, we do have some information on protecting your energy. So stick around to listen to that. I wanted to share that there is something in the air right now. Do you know what it is? Because I do. I'm really excited about it. We are officially hitting autumn season. I am so excited. Autumn equinox is here. It's here, folks. It's so exciting. I love this time of year. Like, I feel like a kid again when autumn comes around. It's my favorite time of year. The season is amazing. I live in an area where I don't really get to experience the full effect of autumn. But I could drive a couple hours and I could be like right there in the leaves. So it's amazing. And where I grew up, I got to experience the seasons and everything, not to full effect of like what you would in like other areas. But I still was able to experience it. But with that being said, I love autumn. I love the colors. I love the smells in the air. I love the sound of the leaves as you step on them and they're crunching under your feet. I love the breeze. I love the cool air. I mean, there's so many wonderful things about autumn, and we're going to get into that, and we're going to get into what makes it so special, specifically around the symbolism of autumn and some of the energy that we bring in during this time of year. So, first off, when we talk about autumn, uh, especially the autumn equinox, we are really talking about this changing of season of going from the summertime into autumn, right? And when we hit the autumn equinox, we have this time where the day and the night is just perfectly equal as far as the amount of hours. Okay. In addition, we're already experiencing that waning period through the year because from the summer solstice, we're beginning to go through the waning part. And we're experiencing where those days are getting shorter and shorter. We marry up with those equal parts day and night as soon as autumn equinox hits. And then we get to go into those longer nights, which I also love. So, anyways, we are going to look at the energy around autumn. We're going to really dive into some of the symbolism. We're going to dive into the history as far as different countries and how they have celebrated autumn. We're going to look at the mythology with it, which is also really fun. Just one of the stories in particular that I want to share today. And if you are feeling like, hey, I live in the Southern Hemisphere, I feel a little left out here because you're talking about autumn, don't, because there's lots of fun tips for you in this episode too. So please stick around. For the Northern Hemisphere, we are experiencing autumn. Southern Hemisphere, you guys are going into spring time right now. So we do have, just so I could let everybody know the dates, but autumn equinox is officially September 22nd this year for 2025. And then if you are going into the spring equinox for the Southern Hemisphere, this is kind of a floating date depending on the year that you're in, but this is going to be in March 20th or 21st. And so we're going to dive in. So if you have something warm to drink, please grab that and cozy on up with your comfy sweater and your slipper socks, and we'll get into this episode. So let's start off by first saying a very happy birthday to our babies that are coming up in the season, our Libra babies, our Scorpio babies, our Sagittarius babies. We have Libra birthdays are going to be September 23rd through October 23rd. So we are just entering into that season. We are going to really see like themes of balance, relationships, and harmony during this time. And then we have Scorpio and Sagittarius babies in autumn as well. And Scorpio is going to be October 23rd through November 21st. And Sagittarius will be November 22nd to December 21st. So happy birthday to you all if you have birthdays there. For autumn, this time of year is really known for the harvesting. And it's known as the second harvest time because we initially go through a harvesting cycle August 1st. And then this is second harvest for the autumn equinox. And this year, September 22nd, but I think last year it might have been like the 21st or something. It kind of like floats by a day, depending on the year, like I was saying. So during this time when you have the harvesting season, this is really about the communal work because maybe we're not going out and harvesting now because it's a little bit different times, but it was always a time for the people to gather in the fields together and actually go through the harvesting of the crops, going through pulling the wheat, pulling the oats, pulling the corn, and taking that food and the fauna and gathering it for their home to prepare for the winter time and the winter months. And what they would do during this time is they would work together in the fields, and then they would take the food and they'd do blessings over the food. And then they'd have a large celebration together. And then they would go ahead and prepare for that winter time, the winter months that were coming up. This time of year, autumn, on an autumn equinox, has a few different names that you might be familiar with or maybe not. But I wanted to share a few of them. So if you are pagan, you're going to hear Mabon is one of the names that will come up. And I have heard this name pronounced a couple different ways before, but it looks like for the most part, a lot of the books and a lot of the information out there does pronounce it as Mabon. And then you have Witches Thanksgiving, and then Festival of Thanksgiving. And then my personal favorite is Harvest Home. And what I really like about all these names is it's really about the gifts from the earth, right? Like you listen to the names of it and you could really, like the Thanksgiving, the Festival of Thanksgiving, and Harvest Home. It's all about that gathering, it's about that celebration of what the earth is providing to us. So I wanted to share a little bit about that. And before we kind of dive into everything, I think it's really important for us to also discuss some of the celebrations that have gone on around the globe with autumn and with the season. So many different cultures celebrate the changing of the seasons, and specifically, I'm going to share three, which are China, Britain, and Mexico. So, for centuries, China has celebrated the Harvest Moon Festival, which takes place on the full moon that's closest to the autumn equinox. And this time is really a celebration of friends and family, food in the streets. And one of the dishes that's really well known during this time is the moon cakes that they make. And the moon cakes are a pastry dish or like a puffy cake thing that's round. And then there's like the red bean paste that's in there and a lot of other things. It looked kind of like gooey goodness. It looked really yummy. And then this is also a celebration origin that ties into yin and yang. So having that balance of the light and dark. And like we talked about in the very beginning of this episode, we talked about autumn equinox and how during that time it's equal parts day and night, right? As we enter into the autumn equinox. So that yin and yang representing that balance between light and dark. And then in Great Britain, there are harvest festivals today that are still celebrated in schools and churches and homes. And with this, they also have a celebration where they do corn dollies. And these corn dollies are basically, and this is something that goes way back in history, but what they did is during the harvest season, they would take the wheat, was most common thing that they used, but they also use barley, oats, corn, what else? Rye. I think that was it. But they would use primarily wheat, though, was the most common. And they would take this wheat that they harvested, and then they'd take a little bundle and they would go ahead and braid it together. And then there'd be a little loop at the top that kind of was like a little head. That's why they called it a dolly. And they would bring it into their home for the season. So during all of autumn, it would stay in the home, and then during all of winter, and they would hang it on the wall. And then during that time, it would sit there. Once the season was over, they would take it and they would actually plant it outside. And it was said that this was kind of like a blessing to the earth to invite in fertility into the entire crops for the new season of crops that were coming in for the springtime. So, really cool story. The other one that I want to share is with Chichen Itza, Mexico. And there is a snake deity that they have on the side of this pyramid. And the pyramid has this snake head at the bottom. So it's at the base of the pyramid. And then for the body of the snake, it's like steps that go up. And then what they have is the way this pyramid was constructed with these geometric calculations. When the sun hits the exact timing of the autumn equinox and the spring equinox, the sun hits the staircase just right, and then it looks like the way it's setting, it looks like the snake is slithering down the pyramid. And it's a really cool experience to check out. So if you have not seen it, I suggest, recommend checking it out. You could YouTube it, which is what I did. And this is set to last for 40 minutes, and it represents the balance of light and dark. So really cool experience, really cool thing to check out. I love the pyramid. It's beautiful, by the way. And then now that we've shared a little bit about some of the celebrations and the way autumn is celebrated throughout, I want to share a little bit around the symbolism within mythology for autumn. So there are a few stories that you could relate to autumn, but there's one in particular that I really want to share today, and that's the story of the Greek goddesses Demeter and Persephone. Demeter was sister to King Zeus and Queen Hera. They were Olympian gods, and Queen Hera and Zeus were married. And Demeter was the goddess of the earth. She brought fertility and fruitfulness to the earth, and the plants, flowers, and cereal crops would grow. And that's what the humans really relied on. And she brought all these blessings through her spirit and through her essence. And her name is said to carry the meaning of corn mother, which also loosely translates to earth mother. Demeter and her brother Zeus, who was married to Hera, Queen Hera at the time, they ended up coming into union, a merge, if you will. And they created the life of beautiful goddess Persephone. And Persephone was also referred to being flower-like because of her beauty. Now, Persephone was one to spend a lot of time in the fields. And one day during her time in the fields, Hades, the lord of death, had risen through the crack in the earth coming from the underworld, rising up, and had seen Persephone, and he took great interest in Persephone and all her beauty. He kidnapped her, held her captive, forcing her to be queen of the underworld. And Demeter searched the earth for her daughter, Persephone. She was filled with such great grief during this time, but she was tenacious. She didn't stop looking for her daughter. She continued on. She went through the fields, and with every step that she took, she wept. And those tears that a mother feels when their child, a part of them, has been ripped away from them, fell to the ground, fell to the earth. And it is said that that weeping is what turned the earth. The blooms began to fade, the grass drying, nature withering away, creating the change in the leaves and the leaves falling from the trees, creating autumn. Demeter, during this time, drank opium made from poppies during this period to help her with the grieving moments. And it wasn't until Hecate, the goddess of magic, was instrumental in Demeter finding out what had happened to her daughter. She had witnessed the entire caption of Persephone and the kidnapping that Hades had done and taken her to the underworld through the crack in the earth. Demeter's mourning continued until the other Olympian gods were able to negotiate with Hades for Persephone's return for a portion of the year. I want to point out a portion of the year because there's a story that goes along with this, having to do with why Persephone only returned for part of the year. And it had to do with some pomegranate seeds that she consumed while she was in the underworld. And she had been tricked by Hades for, eating them and consuming them. But she returned to Demeter, and it is during this time that Demeter experiences the joy of having her daughter return and the earth blooms again, a cycle which comes through her return and departure, a sprouting and growing to a wilted and death period, from spring and summer to autumn and winter. So I wanted to share that story because as you could hear from that story, there's so much symbolism with autumn, right? With the changing of the seasons, with going through, and you could really feel that that dying off period, as we talked about Demeter and her weeping and how it turned the earth. So you get a feel of the essence of that, right? The dying off period of our trees, our plants, as they start to dry up and as they start to go away, for autumn and winter, and then they come back again, right? With spring, we start to have those blooms again. We start to have that growth period. So I thought there was some great symbology in that story, and I want to share it. Also, not gonna lie, love that story anyways. Persephone and the story of her really is like near and dear to my heart. My youngest, a little sidebar here, but my youngest, we actually had named Persephone, and she was Persephone the entire time she was in my womb. Like all of us called her Persephone because that was the name that we thought we were going to name her until she was actually born. And when we looked at her face, it was like, no, that's not Persephone. So, anyways, I do occasionally like think of that name though, and occasionally I will like just sneak it in there. But anyways, so talking about the symbolism from that story, we can now get into some of the other symbolism with autumn. So we're going to kind of break these down, and then I'm going to share with you how we could take the symbology of autumn and work it into our home, work it in the energies into our home, and how we can work it in as far as working with the season, right, for our growth period. So first off, we could talk about the symbolism with birth, death, and rebirth. We already talked a little bit about that with the plants, right? We look to trees and the leaves. As they were once holding moisture, they were once green, and then they begin to turn, right? They begin to turn a color, whether it's yellow or orange or red, but we start to see that change in the leaves, and then they start to dry, and then they actually shed from the tree, right? That death period, shedding from the tree, those leaves. And then it's not until spring that they sprout and they begin to regrow. And we have that rebirth period, right? So birth, death, and rebirth being some of the symbolism there. And then we have the abundance and community piece. We talked about the communal harvesting. That's all about coming together with your neighbor, right? And then the harvesting, abundance, having that fruit, having those crops, having those things come in. You're inviting in the abundance, right? So that is one thing. Also, a little sidebar on this as well is there's, that like horn looking thing, the basket. It's like wide mouth on the very front, and you'll see it in pictures sometimes with like fruit and like bread and vegetables and stuff like stuffed in there. And then it's like, it looks like a shoehorn almost. Shoehorn? No, it looks like a horn that you would blow. Anyways, cornucopia. So that is associated with Demeter and Persephone as well. That also represents abundance and peace. So that's another kind of symbol for the season. And then we look to gratitude, right? We look to gratitude because of feeling grateful to the earth. The earth is providing to us, right? Mother Nature is providing to us through the crops, through the fruit from the trees, and it's providing to us humans and all the animals out there. And so having that gratitude during this time of year. The other thing that I want to also mention is that balance that I mentioned at the very beginning when we talked about the balance between the light and the dark. So that balance within the characteristics and aspects of ourselves that are seen as both light and dark. This is the way to also look at it, right? We have both. They are there, and just like the autumn equinox, not one is more important than the other. They're there to both have their role and have their place. And then we have restoring of the self. So restoring the self, as nights are growing longer, the days are growing shorter. We are not going outward and taking outward action. We're retreating into our home. We are spending more time inside and going within with ourselves as well, right? So that is part of that restoration period, taking the time indoors for ourselves, doing that inner work, really accepting and embracing ourselves during this time period. And then the other symbolism that I already mentioned, but want to highlight, is the bonds between mothers and daughters and the protection piece. We could look to the story of Demeter and Persephone and the great lengths that Demeter went through to find Persephone. She was tenacious. She never gave up. She kept looking for her daughter. And it is through that we can think of that, just that period of like not just the bonding between the mother and daughter, but also like really going and searching for her daughter to try to protect her daughter, to try to get her daughter back, right? So that is something that I want to share. There are two more. The other piece, which I had mentioned early on in this episode, but we have been going through a waning period of the year since the summer solstice. So when you have a waning, you think of it being a great time to clear, to banish, right? So that is something we're also going to look at. And then finally, home. We talked a lot about this. This represents our retreat, our safety, and autumn is the time that we are harvesting, preparing the food, and home for the winter months, right? Because how it used to be is during these cold months, you would grab your food out there, work in the community, and get your crops and get your food all set up in your home. And then you would spend those winter months indoors. So the home was a very sacred, special place, as it should be, right? So, with the symbolism, how could we invite this into our home intentionally? How could we bring autumn in a very intentional, mindful way that could really help us embrace the season, work with the season and the energies that are around it? So, how I like to look at it is I like to kind of look at that list of symbolism of autumn and then kind of like put them in order of action, right? Like how you would kind of move through this. So the very first one being the cleansing, banishing period, the clearing period, right? So I would look at my home and then go through and do an actual physical cleaning. I would treat it as if it's spring equinox, right? Because you think about autumn equinox, spring equinox are opposites from one another, right? So I would treat the home during this period, the beginning of autumn equinox, like it's spring. I would go through and do like a decluttering. I would do a really great like physical cleaning, really thorough getting in there, getting into the corners, getting into the baseboards, like all that. And then once you cleanse your space physically, then I would look at cleansing the space energetically. So open the windows, start from the back corners of your home and smoke cleanse. And there are several options that you could do, but just to name three, you could always use cedar, you could use rosemary, or you could use sage. And like I said, there's plenty of other options as well. But those are just a few to mention for cleansing, for smoke cleansing. And if you've never done it before, you can look this up online for tips, but you want to make sure that you have some sort of like heat resistant dish underneath or a shell or something, just so that you don't drop any pieces on your ground and any embers or anything like that. But you're going to move from the back corners of the home with the windows open and making it way to the front. If you go through any rooms that have dressers or have closets, go into the closets with it, get into those spaces as well. Dressers, I just recently got this tip from somebody and it was super helpful because it was something I had never thought of. But open the drawers and get into those drawers and smoke cleanse the drawers. That makes total sense, right? Like we think about, we're like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense. Because when we are going through the seasons, there's going to be things in our drawers that we're probably not wearing, right? So, for example, you're in autumn now. So it's probably been a hot minute since you've worn any winter clothes because we just came out of summer and we had spring right before that. So chances are you have all the sweaters sitting in a drawer somewhere that you haven't touched for quite some time. Go through there and then cleanse that space too. Like really get in there and smoke cleanse those. I would even like lift the sweaters and stuff and just like get in there. So those are some tips for the cleansing process. I do have one more that I want to mention. There is a water cleansing technique that you could also apply, and I would do this on top of the physical cleansing and energetic cleansing that I mentioned. I would then do a water cleansing, and you could do this with a spritzer bottle. So you could go to the store and you could get a uh, a water bottle that's like an empty bottle for spraying. But I would do either a glass bottle if you could. If not, you could do plastic. The only reason why I say glass is so much cleaner and better in many ways, but also when you're working with essential oils. So you're going to want to use either tea tree oil or eucalyptus oil, add some drops to that with water. You're going to set an intention with that water, and then you're going to have a mantra. And as you go around your room and your space, you're going to spritz it into the corners, into the room, just as if you were like cleaning and smoke cleansing the place, right? And you're going to use some sort of mantra. A mantra that you could say is, I am well and my space is clean. All that is here is good energy for me. You could use that one. You could create your own. You could, play around with the words, do something that's slightly different, whatever works for you. But you do want to go through and add another layer of cleansing through that. So now that you have physically and energetically cleansed your space, what would come next? Well, if we're looking at that list, then you would look at protection, right? Adding a protection layer around your home. So this could look different for everybody because there are so many different ways. And because we all have different needs depending on where we live, who we live with, what we have in our homes, what we have on our property, you know what I mean? So there's many different options that are available for everyone. I'm going to go through a few. Pick and choose the ones that are right for you is all I'm trying to say. So one method is that you could have rosemary planted out front in the soil or in pots. Rosemary is a wonderful plant for protection. You could put it at the front of your door. You could put it on either side of your door or at like a front gate or something like that. Yarrow, basil, and aloe vera. Those are also really great plants for protection. You could have those, like I said, potted or in the soil out front. If you are living in an area where you are going to be entering those months that are going to get frost and then snow, you won't want to have those out front because they're going to get frosted and then they will die and it'll be really sad. So you have options to bring them in the home. If you have a well-lit home, as far as natural light coming in, that can be wonderful too. You could have, it doesn't have to be grand. It doesn't have to be a huge, plant out front. You could have a little mini basil plant or a little mini rosemary plant or whatever that's at your front door inside your home near a natural lit window or whatever. So that's an option there. Another option is you could use salt. I know a lot of people that like to use salt. I don't like salt for a couple of reasons, though, as far as like using it outside. I know some people do. I don't advise it only because it's supposed to be really bad for the soil. It makes the soil infertile. So you don't want to sprinkle salt around your home border. If you're using it inside, that also could be a problem if you have little humans running around or crawling around. Also, if you have any little pets, because you don't want to get your pets sick from the salt. So I would be careful there as well. You can sprinkle the salt in the windowsills. You could also do, one method that I like is you could do eggshells. And the eggshells, you would take hard-boiled eggs and then crack the eggs, take the eggshells off, remove the membrane. Make sure you remove the membrane because otherwise you'll have an icky mess when you try to, crunch them all up. But you're going to essentially make a powder out of them. And What's nice about that too is, you know, how I was talking about the rosemary. If you can't have a rosemary plant that lives inside, you could always sprinkle some rosemary into your eggshells, and then that can be sprinkled around the house on the exterior, by the way. So you could actually sprinkle it outside the perimeter of your home. That is another method. Another method is that rosemary plant could also be dried and hung upside down somewhere around your front door. You could do that with the basil. You could do that with the yarrow. Aloe vera, probably not. Um, so those are some different options that you have there. I'm trying to think if there's anything. Oh, I just remembered another one too. So, and I actually have somebody in my life that has this, and I love it. I think they're beautiful. But you could do figurines out front too. So you could have any protective figures that line your door. So on either side of the door or either side of the gate, lions, gargoyles, dragons. Those are popular choices that are very symbolic for, you know, protection. I actually have a neighbor down the street that has a enormous, and when I say enormous, like I'm saying like it's probably like 30 feet, but this huge metal dragon that's literally out in front of their house that like goes in and out the dirt. And it's like a structure, like a sculpture type thing that sits out there. I mean, I'm not saying go out and get this enormous dragon, but there are different options, is my point for, you know, having these symbolic pieces for protection. So those are a few. So then we look at restoring the self, right? Because we were kind of putting these in order of how would we invite these things into our home so that we could really embrace the season. So restoring the self, once we cleanse our environment, how do we invite invite into our physical space those elements, those energies that we're really wanting to embrace and have represent autumn? Well, we could look at, you know, having different colors and starting with that and then kind of building from there. But before I do, I want to just point out this doesn't have to be your entire home inside. You could choose a focal point. So you could choose a room. And then if that seems like too excessive or like too much, you could even choose a little area like, you know, your couch being your seasonal area. Or I have, you know, someone that they don't decorate their home, they decorate their bathroom, and their bathroom is always changed out with the seasons. I have a very specific area in my home that is sacred to me that I change out with the seasons. And so you just find where I like to look at is where are you spending a lot of your energy, but also like what is the area that would really kind of give you that warm embrace and that would make you feel good going into that space. And so that's how I kind of would choose the focal point. But if you're sharing space with somebody, you could look at having like a mini altar set up somewhere. Also, one that gets overlooked a lot that I think is fantastic is you could have a seasonal space and have these different things going on in your kitchen. And that's somewhere that people spend a lot of time too. If you're cooking, well, I should say if you're cooking, you're spending a lot of time there. I know some people don't cook. But anyway, so that's also an option. Uh, the harvest colors we're going to talk about would be those autumn colors that you're going to see outside, right? So thinking like warm tones, thinking about like if I were to look at a tree during autumn, what would I see? I would see those like mustard yellows. I would see that, you know, that burnt orange, that pumpkin orange, those really vibrant reds, and also the darker reds, the like the maroon, the burgundy, the rust color. I might see like that eggplant color. Navy blue, you're probably not going to see in nature, but that's definitely like an autumn color. Golds for sure. Think of like even the leaves have like this goldness to them, this very rich gold. So yeah, those would be some of the colors that I would work in: brown, various shades of brown, and various shades of beige, also olive green and moss green. So now having the color palette, having in mind a focal point in your home, you've gone through the cleansing, you've gone through the protection. what kind of things could you bring into your home to really invite in autumn? Well, we could break this down by element, and that's what I actually like to do because that way you have a well-balanced area in your home. So I like to look at it and go, okay, what is representing the earth element? What's representing the air, and so forth. So for earth, you could bring the outdoors in. You could go outside in your area. Obviously, everybody is going to have a different terrain outside depending on where you live, right? So look at what's around you in nature naturally, and then that could come inside. So maybe you have leaves that are falling from trees. Those could be very beautiful to bring inside. You could have branches. You could have, like for me, I live in the desert, so I like to pick up, there's a plant called cholla, and when they die off, they leave this like skeleton behind. And it's like, I should have actually brought a piece in here just to show, but it's like a hollowed branch, if you will, with like holes in it. I don't really know how to explain it well, but I would explain it the best as a hollowed branch with a bunch of little holes in it. But it's really beautiful. And so you could decorate with something like that. It depends on like what you have outside in your area for the season. And I would just invite that into your home. If you are living in the city and you don't see a lot of these things around and you don't have a lot of the outdoors to bring in, you could then go to the store. You could pick up, gourds or acorns or pumpkins. You could pick up, corn and have that kind of thing, or the cornucopia thing that we were talking about. Also, pine cones. Pine cones are wonderful. Olive branches, although I don't know that you're going to see a whole lot of olive branches like hanging out somewhere that you could just pick and bring in. You could always purchase if you were looking to jazz it up with olive branches. You could go to like a Michael's store. I would have said Joann's, except Joann's closed, the craft store, but there are stores that sell like those silk flowers and where you can make like your own arrangement, and you can buy olive branches. And you could do that kind of thing if you wanted to. But it doesn't have to cost money. You could just go outdoors and bring it in. And that's really going to be like the best way to do it. And that's, to me, like the most authentic way to really pull in those energies. Um, let's see here. What else? You could, oh, wait, actually, let me back up just a little bit too. I mentioned the pine cones. I don't know if this is just like an Arizona thing because of where I live, or like if this is a thing that they do in like all the different states. But here, this time of year, for autumn, you'll see like bags of pine cones at the grocery stores, and they smell beautiful, but they're like highly toxic. They're like sprayed with some crazy chemicals to make them smell like very, like, that cinnamon smell. Um, so I would just make sure that if you're getting pine cones, like you're actually getting pine cones and you're not like getting those bags of like all these chemicals just like going off in the air, if you're home, like stinking it up. Um, so yeah, so that's it. And then for air element, we'll discuss incense very briefly. There are a few that represent autumn that you could use depending on the intention that you're wanting to bring into your home. And just like anything that I mentioned here, you want to really pick and choose according to what it is that you're wanting to really embrace and invite in as an intention. So inviting in abundance is going to look much different than if you were, whatever, if your whole thing was like just protection all over your house type thing, or, whatever. So incense, we have myrrh, sage, sweetgrass, patchouli, and frankincense. So those are a few that you could work with and use. And for fire, I wanted to talk about candles just briefly, but there are many different options here for candles. So you could purchase candles or make your own candles and have those and light those and have them with color, like a rust color, a wine color, a brown color, orange, something that kind of represents the season that way. But you could also have a candle warmer, and you could have the wax and just warm the candle that way so you're not physically lighting it up. Those are great. The candle warmers for if you have pets, so that you don't have like a fire object around your pets, if like you have a cat that likes to climb or whatever. Um, Yet another option, you could purchase those candles that they sell. There's different stores that have them. I'm only mentioning Pottery Barn because I've seen them there, but I know there's many different places that you could go, like Home Goods has them too. But those candles where they have like the little plastic flicker on the top, and they're not a real candle, but they look like a real candle, and they're like battery operated. So you like turn them on from the bottom, and the little flickery thing, like the little plastic piece actually moves. So it looks like it's really like flickering the light. That is another option. You could also take, and this is something that I've done in my sacred spaces when I've had sacred tent events, because I don't like to use candles inside a tent. I will do smoke cleansing and other things. I do not light any candles in my tents because it's a major fire hazard, that I'm not willing to take a chance at all with people or with myself or with the property or anything. But what I like to do is I like to take candles, and I will use the battery operated fairy lights. They have like those really tiny little lights that you could get from, I know Home Depot and Lowe's has them for sure. Maybe Walmart. I don't know who else. Maybe, excuse me, maybe Amazon, but I try not to purchase from there. Uh, Anyways, you could take those fairy twinkle lights and you could use those to actually decorate the outside of the candle to still give the essence of the light and the fire and all that. But that way you're not physically lighting the candle if you're unable to, or if you're looking at like safety reasons. If you are purchasing a candle and you are planning on lighting it, please be kind to yourself. Please do not purchase candles that are from some of these big brand stores that have all these toxic candles that people are not aware of. Like I didn't really fully, I knew that they were bad. I didn't fully understand and know how bad they were until I started making candles myself and really diving into all of that. And I mean, there's so many things that make a difference, not just the fragrance oils that you're using, not just the wax, but also the type of wick that you're using. And so there's all these different elements that go into it. These big brand stores have a lot of chemicals in them, and I cannot believe that they're even like, I don't know how they get away with selling these at the store. I think it's really bad that they sell them just because of all the toxic stuff in them. So anyways, I would just say try to purchase a clean candle, a clean brand candle. And on that note, I don't have candles right now. I actually had, I created a whole candle line about a year ago, and I only did them for like the fall, winter time. And they were seasonal scents and they went really quick. They were amazing. And I've had some people ask about them. I will be bringing them back at some point. I just don't know when, because for me, the candles take so much time to do. It's so much testing and so many different things. Like any time you change the slightest thing on them. And it was really difficult for me with the candles because you also have to have your windows open and have good ventilation. And I have animals. And so it's like trying to find timing with all that stuff too. But anyways, so that's the candle situation. I want to share a little bit about the different varieties and options that you have for candles as it relates to that fire element that you are inviting into your home for the autumn season. Now, for the elements, I want to end on water. I want to end on water because water is actually the autumn element. It's associated with autumn time. And we have many different options, just like all these other ones with water. The obvious one, you could bring water into your home. You could have it into a dish. You could have a fountain. But you could also have it symbolically represented in your home through a cup, a chalice, a stone from like a creek or a riverbed. Like if you live near a river, you could go collect some rocks or stones out there, bring that into your home. If you live near the ocean, you could invite in these shells, like the seashells or sea glass, if there's any sea glass there. What else? There's mirrors. Mirrors represent water and symbolically have that water meaning. Mirrors are actually like great amplifiers for energy as well. So you could also include that intentionally too into your home. So those are some items, and to kind of give you an idea for tools and a way to be playful with them while inviting in that autumn time and that autumn season into your home. Now, food, we must discuss. So food, we talked about like the crop portion, right? But there's also root veggies, and root veggies are excellent for grounding. And I want to highlight that because we talked about this time of year, autumn, going inside your home, you're spending time inside, but also how you are taking the time to go inward and do this self work, right? So when you're doing that, it's really important that you're staying grounded. Root veggies are excellent for that. So I'm going to name just a few here, and then I'm also going to name some other autumn items. So just in case you're like, whoa, pomegranate's not a root veggie, you just know that I kind of went into the other areas too. So for root veggies, we do have beets, carrots, parsnips, potato variants, turnips, squash, cauliflower, broccoli, pumpkins, Brussels sprouts, and then we have corn nuts, not corn nuts, I'm sorry, corn and then nuts. So separate words, okay? Not corn nuts. Don't go buy a bag of corn nuts. um, Pomegranates, persimmons, citrus, apple, and grapes. So those are going to be some of the fruits, vegetables, and like the root veggies and all that that represent autumn. Now, with that, you could choose two or three or more, and you could make a special feast for yourself or friends or family, and have that be your special welcoming in autumn meal dish, right? And something that was customary to do was to then take the harvest remains and share them with the animals outside. With that said, I love this idea. Just make sure that you look and check into what you are adding outside that the animals can have it, because even certain raw vegetables or raw things, there are certain things that animals can't consume because it could be very toxic to them. So you just want to look into it and make sure that it's something that they could have. Also, if it is something that they could have, make sure that you're not adding any herbs or any salt or anything like that that could be really bad for them as well. So I will give an example for myself in the area that I live in, how I might include this and do this. Now carrots, we talked about carrots are something that's a root veggie in autumn time. So I might make a dish, prepare a dish, and then have some leftover raw carrots. And I might bring this out to the property line to share with the coyotes and rabbits in my area. I could also do seeds and share them with all the crows and the birds that I share space with. I love the crows out here, by the way. We have the most enormous crows, and I'm determined that one day I'm going to make one my pet. I love the crows so much. I like squawk and talk to them all the time when I'm on a walk. I'm sure people think I'm nuts. But anyways, and then there's also herbs for the autumn season, and we're going to get into just a few of them. So we talked about the food portion. Now let's get into the herbs. So herbs, we talked about sage at the very beginning. Sage, you use the leaves, you could use them dried and then use it as a smoke cleanse for either cleansing your tools, your space, or yourself. Now, if you go and purchase a sage plant from a home improvement store or a nursery, make sure that it is the kind of sage that you could burn, because there are different variants. I I always forget the name of the one that I have, but you have to make sure that you look up the proper like was it the I forgot what it's called, but anyways, there's an appropriate name for the sage that you would burn, because not all of them you would. The parsley. Parsley is strongly tied to Persephone, as there is a story that the seeds have to travel to the underworld and back before a germination process begins at the root. Isn't that crazy? I love that story. And for this reason, it makes parsley a great offering and/or herb for energy work with Persephone and her time in the underworld. So it's a great offering for her, but then also a way for you to kind of work it in other ways as well, right? Thinking about that growth period, and as you do work for the self. And then you have time. Time is great for attraction, but also for protection. So you could use it in a couple different ways. And by the way, all these herbs, you could look into them. There's other magical properties that you could use them for. There's medicinal properties for some of them, not all of them. But there's different things. It's just that I'm focusing on these other ones, these ones that I'm sharing right now because of the topic for today. We also have rosemary, which we also discussed. That is going to be one of the oldest herbs that was used as an incense, which is what makes it great for cleansing and protection. We have saffron. Saffron, this particular plant flowers, and it takes 3 years for this plant to flower. And I could not get over when I read that. I was like, 3 years, that's like a serious process. So if you were using saffron, really like be respectful of all these plants, but with the saffron, use it sparingly because it takes 3 years for the thing to grow. But this plant is wonderful for protection. It's known for guarding off evil too, because it's associated with the angels because of the coloring, like the golds and everything in it. And then the other herb that I included is cinnamon. Cinnamon can be used in a multitude of ways. You could use the cinnamon sticks. The cinnamon sticks could be burned as incense on a charcoal disc or solo. You could also, and I said charcoal disc, just so you guys know, in case you've never used one before, they do occasionally make those little popping like things with the little sizzles that go out. So just make sure that you have it in like a heat safe, like pot or tray or something, maybe with a little higher walls or a cauldron if you have a cauldron. But yeah, so you could use a charcoal disc with that or use the incense stick solo to burn. Incense stick, cinnamon stick to use as an incense solo. You could also use the powder form of the cinnamon, and this could be sprinkled on candles. So you could use it much like these other herbs are options for this as well, but you could use it to dress the exterior of a candle. So you would put a oil or something on the outside of the candle. Make sure that you look into what is most appropriate for this. I'm not going to get into that today, but you would then dress it by sprinkling a little bit on. A little goes a long ways. You don't want to do too much because it will create the candle to burn hotter. It will potentially create a fire. So do not do a whole lot of something. More is not better. In this case, less works best. So I mentioned the cauldron or the heat safety pot, but basically, using these different herbs as an incense option. And then some of the other forms I mentioned, like dressing the candles. My favorite option I'm going to share it with you right now, and it's called a simmer pot. I have been using simmer pots for about 25 years, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that. And it might have actually been longer now that I'm thinking about it. Let me do math. No, actually, I guess it would be about 25 years. But the minute I moved out on my own, I started doing simmer pots in the autumn and winter time. I've always loved them. They're really easy to do. I picked up this method from a family member and it's stuck with me ever since. But they are amazing for transforming your space and really inviting in the fragrance of the season. And not only that, but you could use it in a very intentional way and set intentions with it and invite in certain energies. So we talked about abundance. One thing that you could do is have a pot that's your abundance simmer pot. So you would use your cinnamon because we talked about cinnamon, relating to abundance and everything. And then also apples are supposed to be great for that. So you can include apples. And with each ingredient that you were adding to the simmer pot, you are setting that intention for what that ingredient is representing for you. Okay. You could also include herbs in there for protection with that simmer pot. You're going to fill the water about halfway on the pot, and then make sure that you start off the heat. I like to start off on high heat so that actually brings it to a boil. Once it starts boiling, then you can back off the heat and kind of lower the heat setting there. But you will find that it quickly moves throughout the house, the scent. It is so amazing. I love it. I play around with different fragrances, ways to make fragrances with the simmer pot, but then also different intentions with the simmer pots. I absolutely love them. So we talked about that. Also, highlighting something for you guys. I mentioned water. I mentioned filling it halfway with the water, but I didn't mention what kind. So I want to highlight this really quick. Make sure that if you have the option to, you are using filtered water, or even better, if you can, use water from a natural source, such as if you have a lake, if you have a stream, if you have a river, if you have an ocean, or if it just rained, go collect that rainwater. But anything that's a natural source of water is going to be best case scenario for this. And then second best would be filtered water. And then if you have no other options, then you can use faucet water. And if you want to know why I say that, go listen to episode 2 of Conscious Consumption, How to Use Internal and External Music for Healing, where I hit on the importance of intention with water, but then also the natural source water versus treated water. So you could listen in a little bit of that, and that'll give you a little bit of tidbit of information. Lastly, for things that you could bring into your home for the autumn season would be crystals. I'm not going to go super deep into this, but just a few crystals that you could bring in would be carnelian, tiger's eye, amber, orange calcite, and lapis lazuli. And for these crystals, if you were to like line them up out in front of you, you would clearly see why they make such beautiful autumn crystals too, because the colors in themselves like really scream the season. You have carnelian is like, these reds that run through it, these darker reds. You have tiger's eye. It's going to be like this really, really dark brown and then like the gold going through it. Amber, if you've ever seen tree sap, that's what amber is. So those dark, dark reds or like browns. And then orange calcite, it's in the name orange. And then lapis lazuli, that's going to be your darker blues. So really beautiful crystals that are great for the autumn season. The other thing that you could do that I wanted to highlight, because in case anyone's feeling like, oh, I don't have the space to decorate and do all these things or bring the outside in, or maybe you're a minimalist and you don't want to bring the outside in and have these different things in your space. Maybe you're traveling, maybe you are living on the road in your van or your camper and you don't have the space for it. Maybe you're Airbnb and you're like, hopping around from place to place and you can't really celebrate this season by bringing things in. There are other options for you. And those options are you could create a digital altar. And what I mean by a digital altar is you could go on, and I'm just using Pinterest as an example, but there are other apps or other places you could go to do this. But you could go on Pinterest, you could open up a collage, you could then create your very own wallpaper for your smartphone or a background for your smartphone. And you could do this by being very mindful about it and sitting there and kind of mapping out, okay, I want to have these elements, I want to have these items that represent this intention, and then go through those symbolic references and autumn themes and add them to your collage. Once you do that, you have your digital altar. There are other options here too. You could print your digital altar and have that printed out and then carry it with you in your purse or in your bag or in your pocket. You could also hang it on your refrigerator and have that up there. You could laminate it and then have that to take with you places, which I know that sounds kind of crazy. That might just be a Virgo thing. Maybe ignore that. Like, I get a little crazy with the laminator sometimes. Um, Anyways, there are different options is the point, to make it accessible and easy for you if you aren't looking to, bring in a bunch of items into your home, or you don't have the space, or maybe you even share the space with somebody and it's just not an option. So those are ways that you could really like invite it in and bring it in. Next, I wanted to just take a moment to invite you all to share with me on social media your own autumn rituals, decorations, and intentions. Again, you got to remember, guys, this is my favorite time of year. I love autumn. So I would love to know what you guys currently do, what your traditions are, how you celebrate it. If you're into decorating, I would love to see a picture if you're willing to share it. If not, that's cool too. But chat autumn with me and chat all the stuff that brings you joy and how you really embrace the season and how you celebrate it and what inner work you do during this time, if you're doing inner work. And if you feel called to do inner work, please hit me up. Go to my website. My handle is in the show notes. It's soleil-to-moon.com. And you could work with me in various ways. I have several offerings on my website, but one of them happens to be digging in deep and kind of going within through these intuitive card readings that I offer. So that is one option. Also, if you are going to social media to hit me up and share your autumn rituals and decorations and intentions and all that. Like I said, I would love to hear from you. So go to Soleil and then it's the number 2 moon. And that is also in the show notes. So you could go there. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode. It was really fun to discuss all this stuff. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I am also looking forward to the next episode. I'm not going to lie. I'm really excited about the next one too, because guess what, guys? The next one is coming out in October. So what do you think I'm going to be talking about if I love autumn? I love this time of year so much. I feel like a little kid. It is like the best time of year in my mind, in my book. But anyway, so I'm looking forward to the spooky season and all things spooky. I am totally that girl. I could just like stay in autumn and stay in the spooky season and be totally happy. So I look forward to sharing with you on the next episode too. So thank you for joining me. Again, I'd love to hear your reflections on today's episode. So feel free to comment below as well. And thank you. Also, I want to say a quick thank you. I got some wonderful feedback on the AI episode and then also one of the other episodes around the music. So thank you to everyone that reached out. I love hearing from you guys. So thank you for that. Hit that subscribe button. If you aren't already following, why are you not? Hit that subscribe button. Make sure that you subscribe Awakening Airwaves. We have so many wonderful, beautiful shows on this beautiful podcast platform that Yolanda created. So hit the subscribe button so you could get the latest episodes. Conscious Consumption, again, comes out monthly, third Friday. So check us out. Check me out. And then you can find us on all major platforms. So we are on YouTube. So if you want to actually watch us, you can see us on YouTube. If you want to listen to us, you can listen to us on iHeartRadio, Spotify, and apple. Oh, you guys, that was so awesome. Thank you so much. So until next time, stay grounded, stay connected, stay curious, and above all, stay true to the magic within. Thank you. Have a good day or good night. For me, it's night. Have a good night.